This is The Extra Mile.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the next episode of The Extra Mile. I am Justin Duncan, and I'm here with my illustrious colleague, G5. Hey, George, how are you?
This is he. This is him. I'm trying to make sure my grammar is, top notch.
This is
for our new guest.
That's right.
Kerry Johnston. She's a member here. Great people. Robert, her husband, and Kerry. Can't say enough good things about them. They help tremendously. They're super active. They influence in such a positive and godly way. But she has a unique perspective, being a teacher. And since most kids are now in school and it just started, we get that feeling of nostalgia, maybe positive, negative, doesn't matter, and we're back at it and back in the grind. And we want to encourage you, if you're listening in school, or if you're a teacher, or if you're just a parent, about how we should care for others and a teacher's perspective on caring from people. Sound good?
Sounds great.
Sounds good. Tell us about yourself, Kerry.
How much do you want to know?
Well,
start from the beginning.
Yeah.
Whoa. Okay.
We have a lot of dead air to fill. So
okay. I
let's keep it
am
rolling.
one of 4 children, the oldest.
Oh, wow.
I have a twin brother and sister that are 10 years younger than I am. They live in the Dallas area. And I have another sister that's 4 years younger than me, lives in the Dallas area as well. My parents live here, both still living. They attend Shallowater Church of Christ.
Oh, wow, yeah.
The 12th Street, I think is what it's called.
Yeah.
And they live here in Lubbock.
Okay.
So they've been married for, in December it will be, next December it will be 60 years.
Wow, that is so long. That's so cool.
Yeah.
I love when people get to say that.
So,
Yeah.
yes.
That's a great story.
It is. They're a real inspiration.
Good.
We lived in Colorado I lived in Colorado for 6 years. We moved up there in 1976 when I started 7th grade, which for me was not the best because I started 7th grade without a friend in the world, not knowing anything, or anyone. And so it was rough for me, but my youngest brother and sister, they were only 2 when we moved there. So that's all they knew. They graduated from Colorado, up there in Colorado, Montrose, Colorado. It's on the western slope.
Mm-hmm.
It's about 2.5 hours as the crow flies from Durango, north of Durango.
Okay.
So,
Yeah. That's really, I understand how that feels, starting a new school, being kind of alone, having new friends and new teachers, just a new town, a new place to live. Yeah, it's crazy.
And it's a totally different culture up there.
Mm-hmm.
It's just different.
Mm-hmm.
And we'd moved around a bunch because my dad was he was an insurance adjuster for Allstate.
Oh, wow, yeah.
And so they transferred him a lot.
Okay.
And so he had enough, and he said, I'm quitting that and moving to Colorado to open an independent insurance agency.
Okay.
And he did. And they lived there for 26 or 28 years. I can't remember. Wow. And then they moved back to this area because my dad was born and raised in Crosbyton and moved back down here so he could help take care of his mom.
Okay, yeah.
So
for those who don't know or listen, out of state, Crosbyton's like a really small town in West Texas.
It is.
Yeah.
About 45 minutes east of here.
Yeah. Now, you're growing up and starting a new school. Did you have a good childhood, good school life too?
I struggled in school with reading, actually with math. School was not my thing.
Yeah, me neither.
I really didn't care for it that much. I was good at reading and later on at reading, but I was really good at spelling. I always liked to be in those spelling bees, which I don't even know if they do that much anymore. I don't hear about it.
I don't know. There was something on the news about spelling bee not too long ago that I heard. I don't know. Someone won something. But you're right. You were on the spelling bee. Oh, I don't know. No, it was
gotcha.
A national thing.
Well, I think they might do it more up north. I don't know. I'm not real sure, but I don't hear about it here.
Well, when I lived up north, I didn't make it, obviously.
There was always in there some movie about Aquila and the Bee or something like that. I think there's a movie about a spelling bee,
Okay, yeah.
which always interested me because I was like, I know how to spell really well. But I have very literate parents, and
Oh, good.
we use a lot of vocabulary and stuff. And so I've always liked to use words that, are not common
Yeah.
and stuff. But a friend gave me a little meme one time that said, it was two dinosaurs talking. And they said, you can study all you want, but you'll never be a thesaurus. So anyway, I thought that was funny. And so
Hashtag teacher jokes.
it is a teacher joke.
Yeah, that's so good.
So anyway, my parents are very good into that. My mom and I like to sit and do, when we have time, a crossword puzzle.
Oh,
So
nice.
those are fun.
Nice.
But we don't do it in pen. Actually, we do. I just realized we do it in pen.
Really?
Yes.
I was going to say, isn't it a rule not to do it in pen?
You're supposed. If you're really good, you do it in pen.
So you must have been really good.
My mom was. She taught me well.
That's good.
So anyway, but yes. So we have two children. Robert and I do. In fact, in May we just celebrated our 39th anniversary.
Oh, wow.
Congrats.
That's awesome.
Thank you.
That's awesome.
And we have two children. Our son Bobby is 36, married, lives in Crosbyton. They're expecting their third in October.
Wow, that's great.
Yes, a little girl. They have Wyatt. He's 3 years old. And then Aubrey Jane is our bonus grandchild. She, when Bobby married Mallory, she had a little girl already, so she's our bonus grandchild.
Nice.
Aubrey Jane, she's 8 and goes to school in Idalou.
Nice.
And then Katie, our daughter, lives here in Lubbock, and she is 33, not married,
Yeah.
and works as a facilities manager at the YWCA.
Oh, that's great. That's
Mm-hmm.
great. Before we go too far into time, let's back up a little bit and poke around and
Perfect.
see.
Go right ahead.
And see. So growing up, I know oftentimes I'd try new schools or we'd move and I had to go to new schools and things like that.
Went to a lot of schools.
I would probably be more standoffish, and I'd allow friends to come to me because I was always, I was that type of person. But there were some teachers that I stuck to and some that I didn't, and I was opposite. Were there any teachers that inspired you, that maybe encouraged you, that you kind of model your teaching after, anything like that, or just
That's actually a very good question. But for me, I would have to say no.
Wow.
I really did not like school at all.
Yeah.
In fact, I couldn't wait to get out. I couldn't wait to graduate and
Yeah.
get done. I did not go to college right out of high school because, in fact, I had to sit down with my dad and talk him out of making me go to college because, they went to college, so that's just what you're supposed to do.
Yeah.
And I just said it would be a waste of his money or their money if I went to college because I really, really did not like school at all.
Yeah.
And so
I was the same way.
they agreed to it. And I was already dating Robert at the time. And so I moved to Crosbyton. That's the first time I've actually lived there, but we visited there all the time because my dad's parents lived there. So I moved back here, and then I ended up not... Well, I'll tell you a little bit about how I decided to go be a teacher.
Yeah, please
Is
do.
that okay?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
please do.
So we got married a year after I graduated from high school. And so I was technically 18. He was 19. We were young. Didn't know what love is. You just get married. You think you're in love. Oh, I'm just so in love.
Right, yeah.
But then we we basically grew up together, both of us. He came from
wow.
a Christian home, as did I. So that was a good thing we had going for us.
Yeah.
But we've made a lot of mistakes in our marriage, a lot of things. But he worked hard. He grew up working. So he knew how to work. And so I couldn't find my place, what I wanted to do. I knew we got married, and 3 years later we had our first child. And then 3 years later, we had our second. And then we were going to a church here in town, and I decided to work at their church preschool.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
It was called Sugar and Spice Preschool here in town.
Hey, shout out.
Yes.
Emmy goes there.
All right.
So, yeah,
I worked there for 2 years.
Oh, wow.
And our kids went there as I was the art and music teacher for 2 years.
Okay.
And then our daughter was old enough to go to kindergarten. Our son was already in school here in Lubbock. And then we moved out to an area that the school district was Lubbock Cooper.
Mm-hmm.
And so we moved in that area. Katie was starting kindergarten. And so I started taking her to school, and I wanted to be the room mom and all this stuff, because before that, I really didn't get to do that much with when Bobby was in school, because I had her at home. So
Right.
So I got to be the room mom, and that was fun, and I enjoyed that. And I liked the whole small town atmosphere that Cooper had at that time. And so I got involved, and then I really liked it, and then I began to be a substitute.
Oh, wow.
So I really liked that. And then she was in school, so I decided to, I was substituting quite a bit. So then they had a job opening in the office for a receptionist
Yeah.
in the elementary there. At that time, that was the only elementary. It was still one elementary, one middle school, one high school.
Oh, small.
Yes.
So now it's
still real
huge.
small, and
for those
now
who
it's
don't know.
huge.
Yeah.
So anyway, I got hired on as a receptionist. And then I worked in the office. And then about midway through almost Christmas, a program opened up through Tech for teaching assistants to go get their teaching degree,
Oh, wow.
their elementary education degree. And I can't remember the name of the program, but the lady that was in charge of it, her name was Karen Jacobson, and she was wonderful. She came to the schools and was promoting it, and it sounded really cool. I was like, I might be interested in this. So I was actually 30 when this
Okay, wow.
came
Wow.
about.
Yeah.
So I went, like, what was that?
10
11, 12
years.
years,
Yeah,
something
yeah.
like that, close to it, that I hadn't been in school. And so,
So, wow, that to a lot of people today, I feel like that's a nightmare situation, because I feel like today is just in a hurry to be rich and successful,
right.
because they're always competing, right? They're always competing, and
Always
social media doesn't help anything. And how does that change your perspective? Do you like that, or do you not like that?
I have a very unique and different perspective on that, because I feel like nowadays kids are having to decide before they're even out of high school what they're going to be when they grow up. And I don't think they're old enough and have enough experience to figure out what they want to be.
Mm-hmm.
So when I'm asked, I'll give my opinion, but I'm not going to give my opinion unless I'm asked, because I don't want to step on parents' toes or anything. Because foremost, I believe that the parents, what they decide with their children is the best thing for them. But I think kids should grow up a little before they decide what they want to be for the rest of their life. That's a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And at 18, 19 years old,
Right.
you don't know enough.
Well, they just get out, and there's a college expectation. There's an expectation that you
Yes.
should figure out you should already know what you want to do
Yes.
and what you have planned, and that can be that'd be really scary and very intimidating to kids. I know I didn't know what I wanted to do, and I just went in the workforce, and I know I hated school, and so I was like, so I just ended up selling office furniture,
Yeah.
and just waited for things to fall in my lap. But I always think of Proverbs 16:9, where it says, in people's hearts, humans plan their course, but the Lord establishes their steps.
Yes.
I think there's an idea in our situations here where there's an aspect of trusting God that He's going to help guide us in the direction that He wants us to go, that we make the most influence, we can work for Him in that sense, and He's going to know what's best for us. But we take on this vain idea that we need to know what we need to do, and then we need to make $1 million to be successful at it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Although you don't go into teaching to make $1 million.
That's true.
But at that time, I still didn't have a huge grasp on what life was like. You know, we were at church all the time. Whenever the doors were open, we were at church. We took our kids there, involved highly in the activities with them and stuff at church. And then our kids were getting older, so they were in sports and stuff. But we always tried to make sure that our kids understood that being a Christian was foremost. But I still didn't have a good grasp on it. Excuse me. And so then when I decided to go to college, and I talked to Robert about it, he was going to have to help out if I went down this road, because I had to keep my job, because that was part of the program's requirements. So I had to work full time.
Right.
Then I had to, excuse me, I had to work with students. So I had to, the next school year, I had to move to an aides position so I could actually work with students, because in the office you don't get that opportunity. Right. So I moved to an aides position, a teaching assistant in first grade, where I would go between classes, working with 2 specific children. And then I would go to classes at night and on Saturdays.
Wow.
And so
that's a lot of work.
It was. And Robert had to take up the slack, and he was amazing at it. He did an amazing job. He would take the kids to whatever functions they had at night, and then I was missing some games and stuff that because our son started playing soccer when he was 5 years old.
Yeah.
He played soccer for 10 years, so he ended up being in club soccer and stuff, and so. But once I started those classes in college, the college level classes, I absolutely loved it. And it's so odd because, like I told you before, I hated school before.
Right.
But at this time, I had decided my own that this is what I wanted to do. And it took me a while to figure out what I wanted to do with my life. But when I felt like God was kind of opening these doors for me.
Right.
Because that program came along, and I went into that program. I finished my schooling in 3.5 years.
Oh, wow.
Including they counted my job as my student teaching.
Yeah.
And so I finished in 3.5 years, and oddly enough, after 12 years of not being in school, I was still able to clip out of some English courses.
Oh, nice.
Because I guess that was a natural for me.
Yeah, yeah.
And then math was always very difficult for me.
Okay.
So when we got to the end, you had to choose a specialization for your degree in elementary education. You either went the reading route or the math route. Well, I chose math simply because it was less hours. So I went math, and but I ended up graduating summa cum laude.
Oh, wow.
And it was great because my parents came to my graduation, and my siblings, and it was fun.
So what you hated at one moment,
I hated it.
right? And probably if you had to continue, it would probably take you forever.
Yeah.
And then you go and you actually love it, and it takes you a while, and there seems to be meaning and purpose when you're doing these things.
Yes.
That's amazing. Do you think that's why it was so much more enjoyable? You knew what you wanted to do. There was meaning behind it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think that's exactly what it was. And there was one time we were in this supper club at a church we used to go to, my husband and I. And one of the questions, you would go around and they would ask questions for you to just get to know people better. And one of them was, what would be your dream job? And I said, I'm doing it.
That's
I'm
great.
doing my dream job.
Not many people can say that.
No, they can't. And so I've been able to teach, And yeah, there's hard days and there's
Sure.
rough days and days that you're like, why am I doing this? But those are the good far outweighs the bad.
Yeah. And that should just go to show that when we do have meaning and purpose in our life, we're not living in quiet desperation. We actually have purpose to each one of our steps that we're taking. And that should be applied to Jesus is in our lives, and He saved us. Like, oh, now life can make sense. I have meaning and purpose to my steps. And it's like that going to school that second time for you when it was, easy and fun and enjoyable in a sense. I'm sure there were some hard classes and hard moments.
Very.
But there's that aspect of joy that God still calls us to have even when we have good or bad days.
Right.
And there's that joy there because we're following God. We have Jesus part of our life. Now you have this, and God's calling you down this way. I love that. I think that's a beautiful picture there.
I have the majority, this is my 27th year, and the majority of those years I have absolutely loved what I do.
Right.
Well, I can say every year I've loved it. There's days within the
great.
year that is
Sure.
hard. And there was, sometimes there would be some classes that were more difficult than others.
Yeah.
There was a time that I had a principal, and it was mainly she would, and I loved her. She's retired now, but she was fabulous, and I loved her. But she would specifically put discipline problems in my classroom because she knew that I could handle them.
Oh, wow.
Not always fun, but it is what it is. But some of those kids and their parents still are so thankful that I was their teacher because I loved them anyway, and the kids knew it.
Mm-hmm.
I ran a structured, disciplined classroom, but some kids need that,
Yeah.
and they felt safer in that classroom. Some teachers run a more laid-back classroom, and there's some kids that do better in those classrooms. So everybody's
That's
different.
the thing I have seen. Each kid is a little different.
They are.
They need different things. Yeah,
They are.
I've seen that.
And it's hard, especially when you've got kindergartners coming into the building that have never really been in a school before, so you're not sure where to put those. But a lot of times after kindergarten, those teachers try to place them knowing who the next year teacher is going to be, because they know that teacher's personality. Oh, this student would be good with that teacher,
Oh, that's
with this
good.
student. So they try to do that. It doesn't always work that way, but they try to do that because when teachers and students mesh, it's great.
Mm-hmm.
When they don't, it's kind of difficult. And sometimes students just have a difficult time anyway. And as long as I've been teaching, I've noticed over the years that the students we get in our classrooms, there's a lot of times that we have to, we can't teach them academically because they are missing so many other things. And so we need to love them. And maybe they just want to sit and quiet for a little bit, or they had a rough night and they just need to talk. I can't get to the teaching until I've met whatever needs they're having right now.
That's interesting.
So,
Okay, so how do you see that to begin with?
a lot of times it's going to be experience for one. It took me a lot of years to get past wanting to just go ahead with what my goal and agenda was, and to stop and step back and look at the child and think, okay, there's a reason this child is acting the way they are. They're in second grade. They shouldn't be this angry.
Mm-hmm.
And teachers and I have talked a lot about this. Teacher friends and I have talked a lot about this. I don't remember a lot of anger in kids with my peers in class at school.
When you were in second grade.
When I was in second
Yeah.
grade, or even later. I don't remember all of that. And maybe I was oblivious, but I don't think so. But there's so many kids today that are so angry. And it just hurts my heart because a kid shouldn't be that angry. I mean, yeah, kids get angry, but to have this much anger to where you want to throw something across the room, and second grade, I just think, oh my goodness, what has happened for this child to be so angry?
Right.
And so they have to feel some security, some love. And so you have to try different things to get in that child's quality world, because you're never going to reach them if you don't. I can try to teach him all day long, but it's not going to sink in unless he knows that I care about him first.
Right.
Or her. It's not just boys, but boys and girls. And it's
Yeah.
hard. It's hard. And there's a lot more of these children that are struggling because their needs are not getting met at home.
It says in Philippians 2:4, let each of you look not to only his own interest, but also the interest of others.
Right. Right.
I think seeing that you look at the child and you can tell, you can kind of step outside of yourself in that moment and say, oh, there's a deeper reason, an issue outside of just me trying to teach this person that causes this child to be angry. I think it takes a lot of wisdom and discernment.
It really does. And I've had to learn a lot of patience.
Yeah.
And typically I'm not a patient person, but I've had to learn a lot because it may take weeks before this child ever trusts me enough to open up and tell me what's really bothering them. And then once they do that and they see that I actually care and I'm there for them, then it makes their learning a lot easier. We do this program at our school where teachers mentor students at school, different students. And there's a list of students that the principals come up with, and then you can sign up for one of those to be their mentor, and you just check in with them, once a week or and I have a particular student this year, and he's new to our building, and he's in 5th grade, but he every once in a while he'll say, hey, can we meet today? Sure.
That's nice.
Sure. And he just wants to talk.
And you found this to be really beneficial?
Very, very. Okay. If it's done correctly, if you truly meet with them, and I'll ask him what his favorite snack is or favorite drink, and once a week I'll maybe bring him something, just like drop it off at lunch and just kind of slide it over and let him have it. But the main focus is that he has somebody he can talk to when he's really angry, that he can cool down before it escalates to go to where he's in trouble or something. Right. And he's already figured out, hey, I want to talk about this before I get angry, or this is bothering me. And so we'll sit and I'll pull him out of class. Teachers are very good about it. I don't take more than like 5 minutes or so he's not missing a bunch of instruction.
Yeah.
But and most teachers do that. You can walk around the building and I can tell when it's a mentor and a mentee, because they're sitting at a table just chatting about stuff. And I know it's not a teacher that works with that grade level. Yeah. And so it's really neat to see that.
Now, they don't have anyone to talk to? What's causing some of these problems you've seen for the most part, generically?
Sometimes, a lot of times it's single parent homes.
Yeah.
And so the parent is having to work multiple jobs. And so the kids come home and there's nobody there with them when they get there to talk to work things out. That's usually the case, is that they are single parent homes. A lot of times it's just technology devices like iPads, phones are taking over, and kids don't have the social skills that they used to. They need to be able to talk to one another instead of doing this, all the time on their phones, playing games or
texting each other in the same room.
Texting each other and, all those kinds of things. Yeah. So there's not the social skills that we used to have.
That's interesting. You've seen a decline in that.
Very much so.
We're dealing with some of that with my son, where he'll have a piece of electronic or whatever, and going over the moon, like he'll flip out if you take it away from him. Yeah. And I'm all for video game playing and there's so many positive. We've talked about technology before and how there's such positives that can be deemed from technology and
Yes.
experiencing that. I mean, even if going back to vocabulary, I mean, being well read, the amount of reading that can be done on your tablet phone is completely different for our generation who are
Yes.
alive on the earth today than it was for because you had to carry the book around, or if you don't have access to a book, you don't have that information.
Yeah.
And you can summon from Google, Wikipedia, encyclopedias.
In just a matter of seconds.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so, like, there are many positives and benefits of having technology, but it almost seems that there is this anger. You take, well, it's time to put that away and let's go play with Legos. Let's go draw. Let's go play outside.
Right.
And that there are times where there's just such and it's violently strong, the anger. And it's not just sort of frustrated and humph, but it is almost bowing up and coming to fisticuffs and coming to blows. And at least that's what we're experiencing with our child. And it's not all the time. It seems to be periodic.
Right.
What happened today? Are you okay? And opening that dialogue. But in your decades of experience teaching, and you noticed that there was a trend, would you be able to identify it more? Because there's always been single parent homes.
Oh, right.
There's always been, parents that had to work multiple jobs and all of that. So that's not really changed. That seems to be pretty common. What do you think would be that change that's happened in our society?
First of all, I think COVID played a huge part in that, and that wasn't, anyone's fault. It's just a fact. It happened.
Yeah.
It was here. So a lot of families were shut off and away from people, which for the longest time put kids behind.
Yeah.
And so I think students being behind academically, especially if they moved in from other states to Texas, a lot of other states were shut down far longer than we were. So they've moved here because they want their kids in school. So they lacked the social skills from just visiting with their peers, because you can't really do that via online school.
Yeah. And social media is a very poor substitute.
Very, very poor, poor substitute. And so that hurt children. And then I still think, in my opinion, is the technology has a lot to do with it. Not that, you pointed out a lot of positive aspects, and it's so true. It does have a lot of positive aspects, but I don't think that that's what the kids are doing.
Yeah.
When they're at home.
Oh, yeah.
They're left. So if the parent is working 10-hour days, they're tired when they come home. I get it. And then they still have the laundry to do or make a meal or whatever. And so they still don't have the time to spend and have a conversation with their child. That's still another aspect. So the technology is a babysitter for a lot of kids.
Yeah.
And it's
It keeps them
not.
quiet.
It does. It keeps
I've
them
seen that a
quiet,
lot.
and or the TV, either one. And so kids are not interacting with their parents like they used to.
That brings up an interesting point about the need, because the parents need quiet. We need downtime. And if all we're doing is consumed with work, I mean, there's a reason why God instilled a Sabbath day.
Amen.
We need a day of
Right.
rest. We need a day of contemplation, a day of no work. I mean, that's even more than a day of rest, because we can go on vacations and come home exhausted.
Yes, you need a vacation from your vacation.
Yeah, exactly. And so, I had a great conversation a long time ago with some denominational preacher who said that to me. We need a Sabbath. We need a Sabbath. Okay, well, Jesus rested. There were many times where he was with the disciples and they were resting.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I almost feel like that's un-American. No, we must work. We must be productive. We must, and maybe we're reaping a little bit of what we're sowing there. So maybe that would be a healthier way, is considering taking rest with your family. Let's take a day off. We're not going to do any work. We'll do the laundry later. We're going to hang out. We're going to relax. Do you think that would have a positive benefit with the students that you have influence with?
I think it would have a huge impact.
Just to take a little bit of time.
Across the country, I think it would make a huge impact if we, there's a lot to be said. When we grew up, stores weren't open on Sundays. But now things are open 7 days a week. And kids can go to the mall. They can go anywhere there's no downtime. That's something else that I've noticed is kids now, if they don't have something, if they're not doing something every minute of the day, they feel like they're just it's almost like they have an anxiety attack. They want to be busy 24/7. And I also see a lot of kids that are not getting enough sleep at night. Their parents may put them to bed, but they still have their devices, and so they're up till all hours of the night. I mean, I've had several children tell me that, still playing on their devices. And I've said, you need to go to sleep, honey. You need more rest. And they're tired when they come to school. And so...
And that causes more behavior. Samuel did that as well, my son.
Yes.
Where just... and whether it's we couldn't wind down, we tried to do...
You do.
And I think... To the point of just our own exhaustion, if I fall asleep in bed trying to get him to fall asleep, which happened a lot, it actually still happens with my daughter, that and he's just up around and he'll read and then he'll just wake up. And it was a couple days ago I was taking him to school and he fell asleep in the car on the way to school, and I was like, this does not bode well. And
that happened too. Yeah, it happens with me every time. You got to catch up on sleep and all that.
Yeah, and it is. And I've talked to multiple. I mean, I'll hear teachers say in the hall, "Hey, he fell asleep, and I'm just letting him sleep. He's tired. I can tell."
Yes.
And so they let him sleep, because if they come in that tired, I mean, trying to keep them awake is next to pointless.
Yeah.
I've had lots of students where I say, hey, why don't you go splash some cold water in your face? Yeah, can I go do that? I need to wake up. And I was like, okay, sure. Just different little things like that. But if they're that tired, at least let them take maybe, a nap or something, and then you can catch them up later if they've missed something.
It does seem like our culture is just on the go all the time, all the time. I was reading a study I found not too long ago. This is for younger dads and younger kids that maybe haven't entered school yet. It's millennial dads, modern dads. Yeah, no, not you.
Definitely not me.
It's me. Okay.
Excuse me as I go, with more eyes.
Sorry. I found that they found that modern dads, especially, but parenting, are spending 3 times as much time with their children as men did 2 generations ago, and they're doing a lot more during that time. For example, it says in 1982, a whopping 43% of fathers admitted they never changed a diaper. And in recent years, that number went down about 3%. So I'm just saying that hopefully it's encouraging. There's an encouraging future where...
Well, that seems to be a counterpoint to what you just said. So since 1982, there seems to be more anger, more frustration. Whereas that study says that the parents are spending more time with their kids. Or the dad?
This is specifically about dads.
The dads.
But the point I was trying to make there is that I don't think it's counterproductive. I'm thinking it's showing more of a brighter future where this generation, the younger dads especially, who don't have kids in school yet, are seeing the danger of technology like we're talking about. And they're seeing the problem with technology. And what I've noticed with parents in my peers have kids that are, let's say, 3 and younger, or 5 and younger, just starting school, is they're putting more strictness or structure around the technology that they give them because they see the harm that's being done. And maybe that's giving a brighter future. Hopefully there will be a brighter future when these kids do grow up and they're going to be in school, that technology is not going to act as a babysitter, because I've seen that a lot with older parents and older kids that are 10 and younger teenagers. They just, at the restaurant, they give their kid a device so they can talk.
They want to talk, and so they give the kids the device so they don't have to be interrupted or whatever.
Right.
And the kids are really just glued to that device.
Right.
the entire time. And I know what you're saying about younger parents being more aware of the time on technology and how that can harm your child. Our son, I mentioned, he's 36. They are very proactive about not letting Wyatt get on the iPad or watch TV too much, which I'm so thankful for.
Right.
I'm glad they do that because then he goes and plays, you know, goes outside.
Builds that imagination, the creativity.
Yes,
That's so important
yes.
at child development and learning later
It's
on when you're in
huge.
school too.
It is.
Yeah, absolutely.
I know I reflected when I was a kid, my parents weren't really interested in us playing outside by ourselves too much because there were a lot of abductions happening in the early 90s.
Oh, yeah.
And so there was this huge pendulum swing of almost like, no, we can't go outside. It's not safe. And, I mean, it was happening all over. There was this hysteria, you know. It was very commonplace to hear about it, at least.
I know what you're talking about, and it's sad from my perspective because I grew up and I would be down the block playing. Now, my sister and I, we had to make sure that we heard our dad whistle for us when it was time to come home for dinner.
Sure.
If we didn't, we were in trouble. But all he had to do was whistle, and we knew, oh, it's time to go home. And they would say, where were you? Oh, we were down the block. Okay, fine. Mm-hmm. We would ride our bikes wherever and not have to worry about it. But these days, sadly, you have to worry about those things.
Yeah.
And so I get it. But by the same token, parents can be out there with them. You know, I remember our son, I would let him play out in the backyard. I would be in the house doing stuff, but he was out there for hours on hours. Mm-hmm. But I would just periodically check on him. I don't think you can do that these days. I think somebody could easily come along and snatch a kid out of the backyard without
Some hawk could come down.
True, with these little bitty kids.
I know that at least with the parent interaction, that's something that's really great to identify. And it brings up a concept that my roommate and I from college, we were chatting last night even, and we were talking about how when we grow up, we seemingly need a replacement of our mentorship from our parents. Mm-hmm. Now, we still love and regard our parents, obviously. But, and I'm a middle child. I wrote that you were the oldest because you and I have very similar personalities. And I was, that's curious that you're the oldest, and I'm a middle child. And so my roommate and I were both middle children, and so we almost seem to be in sync whenever we have different life experience concepts about siblings, etc. So when we went to school, we seemed to find a mentor, or we were searching for a mentor and looking for the approval of a teacher, the approval of someone that we respected in the field that we were interested in studying, music, preaching, whatever. Mm-hmm. And you mentioned that in school you hated it when you were in secondary school. I wonder, was there a mentor at that level? And if there was a lack of such, I wonder if that's what contributed to you not caring about school so much. Do you recall having like a mentor in high school or middle school? I know you moved, and that's really challenging to go, especially in middle school. Middle school is challenging anyway, but to go to a completely new place with new scenery and less oxygen because you're in Colorado. There's less air to breathe.
True. Although we weren't that high up.
Oh, okay. You say Colorado because remember we live in the flat plains and South Plains here, so you see a mountain. It's just, what is that? Oh, no wonder there was fear from the Israelites.
Of course.
Anyway, mentorship, right? So do you recall a mentor that either inspired you in the times that you didn't care about school versus you mentioned this one woman that helped you in your teaching program?
Yes. I liked her. She was a great person simply for the fact that she introduced that program, the teaching program for us. And she constantly came in and checked on us and made sure we were doing okay, because she really she had a passion for this program and wanted it to succeed. And it did. It went on for after I graduated, I think there was probably 4 or 5 other groups that followed me.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think the funding went by the wayside. But anyway, or it may have evolved into something else.
Sure.
But anyway, I don't know that she was necessarily, she might have been a mentor. She came to a lot of our stuff and was there at graduation, and we would meet as a group because it was all, there were people in my group that were way older than me, that were going and getting their teaching degree. And I was probably, there may have been a few that was younger than me, but not much. And so she wanted to, we would all meet together at certain times just to check on each other and make sure we were doing okay and handling life, because we were non-traditional students. And so I guess I never thought about it, but looking at her as a mentor. So yeah, I would consider her that way. But as far as high school and junior high, no, there really wasn't anybody.
I wonder if that's sort of that's a goal, or at least something to consider for pedagogues, to teachers, to be able to reach out to their students and say, and I would even say in the little that you told us about what you do and how you reach out to the students and how you approach them, of like connecting with them. Mm-hmm. I think that's what you do. You absolutely seem to take these children under your wing and look out for them.
Yes.
And I would say that's precisely what everybody needs. Everybody needs that one teacher that they love, their favorite teacher. It's like, oh, I got to deal with this teacher so I can get to my favorite teacher. Right? And I think everybody really needs that. And, so many of my friends, I was a teacher for a time. I teach here. But, my wife's a teacher. We've talked about this a lot. And she was so fantastic about reaching out and like almost seemingly touching this child's life. And it changes because of your influence. And that it reminds me of Luke 6. Luke 6, verse 40, it reminded me. But there's this chunk here, Luke 6, starting at 39. It says, "And he, Jesus, also spoke a parable to them. A blind man cannot guide a blind man, can he? Will they not both fall into a pit? A pupil is not above his teacher, but everyone, after he has been fully trained, will be like his teacher." And so why do you look at the speck? We talked about that earlier. But the beginning tag of that is, a blind man cannot lead another blind man. They're both going to fall into a pit. And so there has to be this mentorship to the younger generation. You have to reach out. And you mentioned earlier love. You have to love them. You have to love these children. And that comes from a position of understanding. I understand where you are because I was once where you were. And I have now walked through that door. I see through this different lens. And it's going to be okay. Mm-hmm. I think in the depths of sin, that's what we need, rather than you need to.
Yes, I totally agree with you.
You do need to. You need to repent. You need to stop sinning. But that's not from love, perhaps. And so I know in the moments that I found myself in sin, which we all have, that we desperately needed that mentor. We needed that person to, hey, I've been there. It's going to be okay. Stop sinning. And we mentioned John 6 repeatedly. It's such a great story where, they caught this woman in adultery. They were going to stone her. Mm-hmm. Jesus reaches down. He writes in the ground with his finger. Doesn't tell us what he wrote. I would love to know what he wrote. Maybe we can ask him someday. But all of the people, because if you were without sin, cast the first stone. Everybody left. Where's the woman? She stands up. Woman, where are your accusers? They've all gone. And he says, and I don't accuse you either. Go and sin no more. And there's such love there. Mm-hmm. There's such love there from Christ. And that's how we have to show one another whenever we're sinning, whenever we can help each other. We're all in this together. And it's an interesting concept to look at life from the standpoint of mentorship. I need someone who's older than I to be an example. And if you think about this lineage, you mentioned Hebrews 12. Was that in this one or the previous
Last
one?
podcast.
Oh, man. See, they're running together.
Which is the next podcast you'll see posted.
So we're doing them. We do them out of order. But anyway, so Hebrews 12 mentions about, I forgot what Hebrews 12 mentions about. Take it away, George.
If you run with endurance the race that is set before you, looking to Jesus idea, right?
I don't know. I got confused.
Well, I agree with you on your.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I'm going to stop talking.
But I agree with you on the
You're
mentorship because we all do. We all need somebody, and sometimes it may not necessarily have to be an older person. It could just be somebody that has been where you are and can tell you it's going to be okay.
That's a great point. That age has nothing to do with it. I agree with you.
Because mentoring someone comes from experience, not necessarily experience. I think it comes from love. You have to love people to be able to do that.
Yeah, that is great.
Yeah.
And you may not be where they're at, but you can definitely love them and listen to them. You don't have to be anybody special to be able to do those two things, other than have the love of Christ in you, because that's going to compel you to go do those things.
Do you think that people really need to be heard? That they need someone to listen to them, to hear their story?
So. Very much so.
I find that interesting because it seems like what we've been talking about as being problems is that people don't have anyone to listen to them. They don't have steady structural home life. They don't have relationships. And that's what we're really diving into when we talk about being mentors and disciples, is the relationships we're building around these people, the kids and teachers and parents and kids and all these things. I think this generation and people just need relationships.
They do. And if they could find, and I'm still growing my relationship with Jesus.
Yeah.
And he's showing me every day where I could do better.
Yeah.
And I found as a teacher at my school, I'm not just there for my students. I'm there for the other teachers.
That's a good point too.
They know that I'm somebody they can talk to, and I'll pray with them. I've prayed with many teachers, and they know that because I believe in the power of prayer. And there's a lot of times I'll tell Robert, I had to go talk a teacher down off the ledge today. Not that they're lit. That's just a.
They should close the access to the roof off. I don't know why they let people go up there.
You just made me laugh. But
good one.
That is a metaphor.
Yeah. It's
I
clarifying
understand
there.
now.
But it's, you get caught up, and my position is different now. I'm not in a regular classroom anymore.
Oh.
I do math intervention. Oddly enough, I hated math, and now that's what I do.
All right.
But I'm also able to relate to those students because I didn't get it, and they don't get it, so I'm passionate about helping them get it.
Yeah.
But so I have a lot of times some freedoms to go and listen to a teacher just blow off some steam, or how do I do this? I'm frustrated. I'm overwhelmed, and I just try to listen to them. And again, it's more of we need to listen and not talk at them.
Yeah.
Once they are able to express themselves and have you hear them, does that help?
It really does.
So what are the effects of that interaction?
Just being able to voice a lot of times their frustrations. They're able to step back and maybe think more clearly, or I just needed to get that off my chest, and so now I'm able to go in and be real with my kids, because teachers you don't want to show that side to your students. You wouldn't. First of all, it's not professional, and two, those are things that you're having to work through in your head as a teacher, especially if you're not sure how or why I can't reach this kid, especially when you're in the middle of it, you can't see everything sometimes. And so listening or maybe offering some experiential advice can help. So they're able to go in and think, hey, yeah, that worked. Thank you. There was a teacher today that she was struggling with some stuff on how to teach this or that. And I was helping her say, well, you might try this. And she said, that was great. Thank you so much for doing that. And when you're in the middle of it, it's hard to see it.
Of course.
And so as long as I can just listen.
To be able to bounce ideas or concepts or even methodology off people is so helpful. I mean, George has been such a help to me in the last few classes that I had to teach the last couple of weeks. Really intense concepts, especially about Scripture, resurrection, bodily resurrection, concepts of the church, heresies over such things. You know, these are really intense concepts, and you know, I had nobody to really turn to, because if you Google search that, how do you know what's credible? How do you know what's right?
Right.
And like, I've read the passages, but it felt very much like the Ethiopian eunuch. Like, do you even understand what you're reading? Unless somebody shows me, how can they?
How can I? And I've heard the phrase before, and I really like that. We need to be Jesus with skin on. We need to be the person that is going to listen to them or love them or not condemn them. You mentioned a while ago about the Jesus, just the woman that was being the adulterous woman.
Mm-hmm.
He loved her.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so I've learned over the years, and I'm still learning. Sometimes kids can push my buttons, but I've learned to step back and listen and just ask probing questions like, what happened? Why do you think that? Or what could you do? You know, those kinds of things. And then they start talking about it, and then they realize, hey, she's not getting mad at me. She's not hauling me off to the principal or whatever. She's actually listening and cares about what I want to say.
Right.
Which is their expectation.
Yes.
That's what they expect to happen.
Yes.
I've noticed, and even in my own corrections with my children, like I'll notice my son, he'll say something to me and he'll give that little look of, okay, here comes the hammer, it's coming down. And I've noticed him doing that so much that it's, I need to check myself and make sure that I'm not popping off, and dealing with my own children.
And it's real easy to do that.
Yeah.
And I've done that before.
To bring down justice.
Yes, bring down justice. And, old school kind of stuff. And I was raised under the old school stuff.
Yeah.
I was raised under children are seen and not heard.
Uh-huh.
And so nowadays that's not the case at all. I don't know that any child today would even know what that means. Children are seen and not heard.
Yeah. Wow.
And so kids voice their opinions a lot more these days. And so listen to them. But you don't always have to take what they're saying. But as long as they feel like they've been heard, they're going to be okay for the most part with what's going on.
Yeah.
It also seems that you have mentioned colleague companionship to the other teachers as well. Like you have confidants.
I do.
They confide in you.
I do. And I've told Robert this many times. I look at my job as my ministry. It's not
great.
just to the students, but it's to the teachers as well. In fact, there was a few years ago, all of my teacher friends had moved to different schools, and I was there. And there's tons of teachers in the building, but
You're at middle school all over again.
yes, I was like, I don't have any friends, and I would say that to Robert, and so I thought, hey. I asked him specifically to pray for someone to come along that I could mentor and be there for. And that very next year, there was a teacher right across the hall from me, and we bonded and grew, and that was her only year in that grade level. She moved to a different position, but we became friends, and she was a single mom, and it was wonderful. She would come over and talk. We would talk a lot about not school stuff, just life.
Yeah.
and her husband had been killed in the line of duty. So anyway, she was a single mom, and it was wonderful. And I still see her from time to time. She's not even in my building anymore, but she's a great friend.
That's awesome.
And so I know that God put that person in my life for a reason. And it made me realize this isn't all about me.
Mm-hmm.
It's about other people. And so I just have to remember when I go to school, it's not about me.
That's great.
It's about these kids that I see every day. And that was one thing. I was so ready for the kids to come because we have lots of meetings before school, and I'm just like, oh, I hate this. But then when the kids come, I'm great.
I love that's what you're all about.
That's what I'm about. Is I want the kids.
You're
there.
able to put yourself aside, and that's our faith. I was able to deny ourselves, put ourselves aside.
Yeah.
You know,
The
focus on
encouragement-
God and
Yeah,
us.
I'm sorry. I thought you were done. Focus on
I'm
God.
done now.
No, I was. I'm sorry. I was just saying
I'm kidding.
that it seems that you're a Barnabas to those around you. Barnabas being the encourager.
Yeah. Oh, well, I've never looked at it that way, but yes.
Well, that
thank
was
you.
mentioned in a class a long time ago, and I've taken that to heart. Where I even think the name Barnabas, does that not mean?
I think it does. Yes,
Some
encourager.
encouragement,
Yeah.
I think.
And so, not that you are Barnabas, a la a man that died centuries ago, but that the concept of being Barnabas, and that it brings to light the body of Christ and how some are an eye and some are a hand, and I'd like to think that I'm toe jam that's underneath the big toenail.
But that's kind of gross.
Sorry, we'll edit that out. But that there is that everybody needs a Barnabas, and to serve that purpose for people who desperately need it is such a great ministry. It's such a great work, and it opens up the door to speak spiritually with these people. Is that if they find you a confidant in regular life and in their profession, their job, and their frustrations with dealing with children and trying to educate them, and this weird network of structure that American culture has built around education. Where
Yes.
it seems that education is merely a byproduct and not like the primary focus now.
Mm-hmm.
We're not going to get into that. But
Thank you.
I think that reaching out to people and allowing that door to be open, allowing those connections to being made, and then making lifelong friends, the influence there is just invaluable.
It is.
And
And I take it very seriously because I've had some people that, I had a mentor teacher. When you start at Cooper, and I'm assuming all districts do this, but they may not. Cooper, if you are a new teacher to Cooper, then you are assigned a mentor. And they're supposed to come and work with you and help you become acclimated and with teaching and help you with whatever you need, because it can become overwhelming really fast.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had a mentor teacher that was phenomenal, and I loved her. She has since retired, but she was in fact, she was our daughter's second grade teacher. And in fact, Katie's, I think, favorite teacher. But anyway,
There you go.
yeah, I know.
Yeah.
She was wonderful. And so
That's
she
awesome.
really showed me how to love kids.
Yeah. She passed the baton on to you.
She did. I
Yeah.
hope I'm doing well with what she passed
That's
on
right.
to me.
That's all we can do is, God's gonna is wonder what you do with what I gave you. All we can do
Right.
is try to do our best with what He's given us. I think that's a wrap. Thank you, Kerry.
Sure.
I really appreciate the conversation, and I love the story. There's more to teaching than just being there and teaching a class.
Exactly.
It's
There
being
really
there,
is.
building relationships, showing love, the love of Christ. That's great. Thank you. Anything else you want to say, Justin?
Oh, you're throwing to me. We'd like to thank our sponsor. I'm kidding.
Yeah.
I did it again every time we have a guest.
Saratoga for pencils?
That's right. I'd like to thank,
Yeah.
I don't know. No, thank you for coming on. And it really brings to light, not only if it's your job and you get paid for it, but it's more of a responsibility for us, especially in Christ, to not only refine ourselves, as the Bible tells us to do, to grow in Christ, but we're not alone in that. We're not like Elijah, where he seemingly was alone on the earth, being faithful to God, but that we have this web of this network of witnesses around us.
Yes.
And being the structure of the church and being spiritual beings, having Christ put on us, we put on Christ, and we therefore behave differently from the world, can only serve to have people who are in the world who desperately need to come to Christ. They look at us and our fruits and our labor, and it seemingly raises an eyebrow, and they ponder, well, why are they different? And having that door open, that's as much as God needs to be able to allow his work to happen, and for them to even contemplate not only coming to Christ, putting on Christ, and having a mentorship, Luke 6, that these mentees become like you as we are trying to become like Christ. And so there's this beautiful, this amazing effect that living a godly life and putting that into your work can have, and it can work such wonders, especially with the kingdom. Mm-hmm. And so I encourage you in that, and thank you for encouraging us by coming in and being an example to us. And I felt good.
Well, with that said, go so.